they did not want to hear anything about all this experience and all this that I had. They just wanted me to be the person that I was before I left.
Hey Islanders, and welcome to episode 94 of the Camano Voice. Today I speak with a previous CEO of multiple different hospitals that had over 4,000 employees. Please welcome Richard Skillman. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. On this episode, I got to speak with Richard Skillman. I kind of had a chance meeting with him here at the marketplace and started talking with him. And he actually was a CEO of, CEO of multiple different hospitals or health systems, where he was the CEO of over 4,000 employees. And so I really wanted to get his take on what it takes in his mind to run a team and kind of glean a little bit from his experience as a business person. What I got was way more than just that. So I ended up breaking this into two different podcasts. The first one is really going to kind of focus on Richard Skillman and his history, because we actually got into his beginning years, which was he actually had 3 tours in the Vietnam War. So he talks about that, what his experience was, what it was all like for him. He also has a Christian background, so going to war with a background of that. And so we get into all of those details and get into a conversation about that. And I thought it was a nice starting point. And then next week, we'll come back and we'll talk really more about the business side of him running these companies and how he made a difference. And how do you make a difference in so many different lives of that many employees? I can struggle here at the marketplace with just over, around 30 team members that we have here. And I can't imagine trying to manage and motivate and work with up to over 4,000. So anyways, it was a great conversation. Really enjoyed it. I got a lot out of it. I know you guys will too. So like I said, come back next week for part 2. But without further ado, here's my conversation with Richard Skillman. Hey Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with the previous CEO of Valley Health Systems. He was also the CEO of St. Jude Hospital, as well as the Senior VP of Operations of a 1,000-bed teaching hospital. Welcome to the podcast, Richard Skillman.
Thank you. We're glad to be here, Brandon, finally.
Yeah. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about Richard.
Well, how much time do you have? Anyway, no, I'm kidding. I was raised outside of Philadelphia in what is known as the Main Line. And the Main Line is based on the fact that the Pennsylvania Railroad went west from Philadelphia and created their right-of-ways. And the Main Line was how the suburb developed outside of Philadelphia.
Okay.
And right now, it's probably one of the wealthier places to be. When I was there, you could still walk around the township and some people would know you and et cetera, but now it's changed a bit. So anyway, I was raised outside of Philadelphia, went to high school at Radnor High School. It's a really good place, and graduated, went to Princeton University, and I majored in political science there. Although nowadays I'm not so sure politics is a science. So I don't quite understand it. In any event, I did that after almost flunking out being pre-med.
Okay.
Oh my God, that was really something. But anyway, I ended up graduating with a degree in political science.
Okay. So let me stop you right there for a second.
Sure.
So first of all, you said you went to Princeton.
Yeah.
How was the getting accepted there? How was getting into that?
That was, in those days, when they didn't have every college didn't tell you were accepted at the same time, so then you can pick. So I applied to Colgate, Amherst, and Princeton, and Colgate accepted me and gave me a time frame and said, "Okay, you have to let us know by that." So I hadn't heard from the other two, and so I turned down Colgate, and then I had the same situation with Amherst. And then at some point I had to give Amherst an answer, and I said no, betting that I might get into Princeton. And I finally did under an NROTC scholarship.
Okay.
And I was there for the first part of my freshman year and decided I wanted to be pre-med, which was probably well, it was an unfortunate decision because it ended up costing my family a bunch of money because I lost my scholarship. And unfortunately, my dad and I didn't have the kind of relationship where he'd sit down and say, "Hey, son, think about what you're doing here, what it's going to impact on us." Mm-hmm. And he was in the generation that didn't say much of anything to kids. And anyway, I ended up going to Princeton, and when I graduated, well, I was in a public high school, small public high school. It was really good, and I thought I was hot stuff. You know, like I was in the top 5% of the class, and I got advanced placement in French, physics, and math. And so I thought I was really hot stuff. So I go into Princeton, and all of a sudden, there are hundreds and hundreds of men who have been, at that time it was all male, who are much better trained than I am. Mm-hmm. And boy, did I hit the wall. Yeah, and I had to learn quickly humility. And that was tough. But when you go from being in the top part of your class and mm-hmm. advanced placement to struggling to even pass, because at those times they graduated on the curve. And so if 95% of people did better than you, even though you did A-level work, you got an F because everybody else got.
Wow.
Yeah, that was rough. Oh my God, that was rough. But anyway, somehow I was able to survive. It also was one of the loneliest times in my life because many of my classmates had gone to prep school.
Okay.
And so they came in with a certain level of not only academic, but also a sense of entitlement. And I wasn't that. We were just middle class people from Pennsylvania, and so we went to school anyway. I for some reason I survived, and I graduated. And when I graduated, because I had done ROTC for a short stint, mm-hmm. The Navy had their grips on me, and they said, "Here, you can either go as a seaman apprentice or a seaman for 2 years, or you can go to officer candidate school." And I said, "Well, I'm going to go to OCS." So I went to officer candidate school in Newport, Rhode Island, and I graduated as an ensign the day John Kennedy got shot.
Wow. Okay.
Which was pretty emotional because we were on a high. We graduated. We were officers, and we get to the front gate, and the Marine is in tears. And he said they just shot the president.
Wow!
And it was an extraordinary experience, just amazing. But anyway, I ended up going into the Navy, and I studied. I became a legal officer through the Navy, but I was assigned to a ship out in the West Coast, and I'm really glad I did because that introduced me to sunshine and nice weather. Anyway, at the time I entered, it was early on in Vietnam, and we went over there to the Western Pacific, and there was a Tonkin Gulf incident which triggered a huge escalation of the U.S. involvement there.
Okay.
And we were right there when it happened.
Wow.
And from that point forward, it became we were involved in the war. And I had 3 tours over in Vietnam. Okay. And spent 15 months actually in the war zone itself. We did close support for Marines all over coast. But
what was that like for you? I mean, you hear about like of all the wars that you hear about, like that one is one that stands out as just extremely difficult and like I guess intense war because of the way it was fought. Like, what was that like?
Exactly. Well, I went into the war with, as I said, a middle class upbringing. We were churchgoers. We were in a strict Presbyterian, almost Calvinistic kind of thing. So that was my moral framework. And when I went in there, and it didn't take long for that framework to be challenged. And over the 3 tours I went, it became increasingly challenging for me to be there because the way it was the way it was being managed from the U.S., it was as if senior officers in all branches of the military who had spent 20 years since the Second World War, training to make war.
Mm-hmm.
And they finally got a chance to do it. It's like, okay, here we've got all these things. We've got these men and these boats and these whatever. And now we can get a chance to play war. For me, there was never a sense of, here's the objective. Here's what we're doing to achieve the objective.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was very challenging for me. I felt really stuck because I didn't like what we were doing. It wasn't right what we were doing to the Vietnamese over there. We didn't have a clear objective. The hardest thing was I lost a bunch of men over there, and which was not necessary.
Mm-hmm. And
it was unnecessary because we were ready to do what's needed to save them, and because of inter-service rivalry between the Navy and the Army, it is intolerable. That was extraordinary. I can still remember the moment in time when I realized that the men we were supporting were getting killed, and I couldn't do anything about it. So I flew out of the war zone, and 18 hours later, I was by myself in the middle of Union Square in San Francisco in my khakis, by myself. And the coming home was almost as bad as the actual war experience because nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody cared what my experiences were. There was no, here's a way to re-enter back to society.
Right.
So you're in a war situation where you're shooting and getting shot at, and all of a sudden there you are in Union Square, and the biggest concern is who's going to win the World Series. And 4 days later, I was in front of my then wife. We subsequently divorced, but my then wife and my parents, and they wanted me to be the person I was before I left.
Yeah,
They did not want to hear anything about all this experience and all this that I had. They just wanted me to be the person that I was before I left, and it took me a decade or more to try to cope with that because I thought I was crazy. I thought I was the one. There was something wrong with me because I could not do that. I couldn't be that person.
Yeah. Right.
I couldn't be that person, and it was mind blowing. It was, and again, there were no resources at the time. They didn't talk about PTSD. They didn't have anything like that.
Right.
And so for all the colleagues of mine that came back from Vietnam, you didn't go there as a unit and come back as a unit. You went over as an individual and came back as an individual.
Wow.
And they changed that. They've changed that now, realizing that that's not mentally healthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you go over as a unit, you get to share your experience, and then you come back and you have a group of people that have shared experiences.
Right.
I didn't. And at one point, my dad was a Princeton grad as well, and he took me back to. I went back to a football game, and I was in the stands in this football game, singing the alma mater, and it was such a disconnect.
Yeah.
It's such an extraordinary disconnect because not a month earlier we were in a war zone, and I was here. And anyway, the good news is I have 2 children from that first marriage, and when they were born, they actually saved my life because when they were little and infants, and I was holding them in my hands. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, this feeling of unconditional love came surging out. And I said, oh, that's a path out of here. That this is real, this kind of love. And I also knew at that point I didn't love my wife because this is what I felt for my kids, and I had nothing. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but the way you survived, the way I survived over there, mm-hmm. About halfway through my second tour, the way I survived is because you have 2 choices. You can go crazy or not, and if you do choose not to go crazy, you have to take all your feelings and stuff it in a box. You can't allow any feelings because if you did, it'd be crazy making. You in order to function, you had to just stifle every emotion you had. And I didn't realize at the time what a price that was to pay. Because when I came back and I was faced with this wife that I had married between my second and third tours, and I was not emotionally available to anybody. Mm-hmm. And so the seeds for our dissolution were sown. But as I said, our 2 daughters were the beginning of my pathway back. And eventually we were divorced, and it was, in those days, it was really weird because my wife at the time thought she was going to find her freedom. So she had an affair with a neighbor. The neighbor moved. She said to me and the kids, I'm leaving. I'm going to follow this man who's married and has kids of his own. Mm-hmm. And I'm leaving you and the kids. And again, that was almost like the war. I mean, I had no frame of reference for that.
Right.
I had no frame of reference. Mothers don't abandon their kids.
Right.
Okay, so anyway, I eventually lost custody of the kids and followed them. I gave up a career in hospital administration because the kids at that point were my only source of love, the only source. And there they were moving to Palo Alto. And I couldn't tolerate to be away from that. So I gave up a trajectory. I was on a really nice trajectory in my career and followed them. But I followed them, and I'm glad I did because then I met my current wife, Shireen Zolno. We've been married for over 40 years.
Congratulations.
Oh, yeah. And thank God because I found a woman, a partner, who stayed with me because at the time I lost custody of the kids. That really triggered a dissolution of my free, how I could be in the world. And I lost a job, and I couldn't figure out how to stay in the world. Yeah. This is part of PTSD. It's just a delayed impact. But fortunately, as I said, I met Shireen, and in my craziest times, I mean, I actually was suicidal at times because I couldn't figure out how to be in this world. It just, how could I be in this world and make sense out of my experiences?
Right.
So anyway, she was absolutely incredible. She gave me a gift that is so rare but so amazing. In my craziest times, when I was crying and I was just in pain and agony, she sat with me and she said, "I love you. I am not going anywhere. I'm staying here, and I'm with you. Whatever you are going through, I'm here." What an incredible gift.
Yeah.
That somebody offers you that.
Yeah.
So anyway, she did, and she is a big reason why I was able ultimately, through the grace of God and some therapy and the kids and her, I can tell you the moment I was in San Rafael and in the back porch, and I remember the moment where things settled down. I said, "Okay, I can do this. I can be here.
Yeah.
I can do this." And it actually led to getting back into healthcare and hospital administration, my job in Fullerton. I got back into a career trajectory again, and it saved my life.
Yeah. So something else you touched on in there, and it's something that I think I mentioned on the podcast before, but my background is Christian as well, and one of the things that I've always kind of wrestled back and forth with, and I probably have gone back and forth on this subject a lot in my head personally, is Christians and war and how that reconciles. And you were mentioning in the beginning of the Vietnam or throughout your tours were really challenged in that, having a Christian background.
Yeah.
What was kind of the end result of that? What was kind of, how did you reconcile all of that as you were going through everything?
Well, it took me a long time to get back in touch with God as love.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't reconcile that when I was being shot at and we were shooting at people. And at one point when this was going on, I thought to myself, there's a 20-something-year-old Vietnam person over there who we're trying to kill, mm-hmm. and he's trying to kill me, and neither one of us want to be here. All we want to do is go home and be with our families.
Yeah.
We don't want to be doing this. So it was a challenge, and what I didn't realize, Brandon, was my experiences in Vietnam resulted in me being filled with rage. I was filled with rage because we did things that were intolerable, and I was forced to be part of it, and I didn't want to be there.
Yeah. And
I didn't agree with it. It didn't fit with my ethics. It wasn't anything to do with serving my country. And I ended up, and I didn't realize this, that I was just filled with rage. And so I was angry with God. I said, how can what I was taught be true if this is what we're doing?
Yeah.
And it didn't make any sense to me. So it took a long time. And I actually, after I got back, we experimented with some of the various denominational churches, and organized religion per se did not meet my needs, because I always felt I was born on Christmas Day.
Okay.
I was born on Christmas Day. So growing up as a kid, having been born on Christmas Day, you have a certain relationship with someone else who his birthday is celebrated on that day.
Right.
And so I had an early relationship with Jesus in that sense. And so it was really hard coming back to get back into organized religion. Did not meet my needs. I wanted to have a personal relationship mm-hmm. with God, and I wanted to have a personal relationship, and I couldn't find it through these organizations. And ultimately, I have found. You're familiar with the Ananda Farm and Zach and Haley.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that spiritual path is what I fell into in the 80s. And that gave me a way of developing and nurturing, again, my relationship to God.
Yeah.
And that has been my path. And I'm so blessed with that. So it's been, that is also an element of my life saving my life, because it has become a central part of my day now.
Yeah.
And because turns out I almost died from heart issues that were related to Agent Orange back in Vietnam, and I didn't know that, but I have learned early on. I was going to be the 50-year-old coat and tie guy that was great, and then the next day fell flat in his face dead. And I didn't know that, and fortunately, I didn't. That didn't happen, but it came close. But what I'm trying to get to is every day is important to me. Mm-hmm. Every day, I don't take a single day for granted. I don't take the sunrise for granted. When I see the sunrise, I feel joy, and when I see my wife, and when I see my kids, when I see Zach and Haley, when I see you, and when I experience the people that are here at Camano Commons, I don't take any of that for granted. I take it for the joy in the moment, and there it is, and you embrace it because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very cool. That's our mission statement at the marketplace. It's something that we don't necessarily post it and stuff like that, but it's within our handbook, and it's what we try and teach our team as we're moving forward. And when we bring them on, is to bring joy to the Camano Island community through food, service, and drink. And it's because we don't know where people's life situations are at. We don't know what type of, what they're coming from or what they're going to. And we have the benefit of working in a place that people are choosing to come here because they want to, not because they have to. And so if they're choosing to, do business with us at our place, we want them to leave more joyful than they came to us. And that's kind of been our mission in especially through the pandemic and everything. It's been something that has been more forefront than even normal. So,
well, I was actually thinking about you and your team here, that is my experience of you.
Oh, good.
And you wanted to talk a little bit about small businesses and the success of that. And I was thinking this morning that the success of a small business is exactly what you're talking about, is that your customers come in and they leave feeling acknowledged, respected, with, as you say, a little bit of more joy in their life. Mm-hmm. And so through the transactions that they have here, they come in and they leave feeling better about themselves and their day going forward. And that's you can't have a better mission statement or objective to your work. And I think that's true for any small businesses.
Well, a big thank you to Richard Skillman for joining me on the podcast. Remember to come back next week for part 2 of this episode. If you want to know more information on anything we talked about in this episode, though, you can go to CamanoCommons.com/EP94. That's CamanoCommons.com/EP94. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.